for a brand new show. Scooby Doo is here again, away we go.
Scooby Doo is running from a spooky ghost.
Shaggy isn't doing what he does the most. Hey, come on, get involved till the mystery is solved.
Hang around for Scooby Doo.
Hey, come on, get involved till the mystery is solved.
Hang around for Scooby Doo. That's my pal. Scooby Dooby Doo.
Hello, Scooby Doo fans! Welcome to my Season 3, Episode 1 review of The Scooby Doo Show. So last time I continued my 2025 summer special with a review of Season 2, Episode 8 of The Scooby Doo Show. I hope you guys enjoyed that. But of course today, I'll be covering Season 3, Episode 1 of The Scooby Doo Show, titled Watch Out the Willowa, which was released on September 9th, 1978. The short synopsis of the episode is, the gang is going to meet Velma's uncle at his cabin. They get worried when they find him gone and the cabin ransacked. While looking for Velma's uncle, they see something monstrous flying in the sky. They learn that it's the Willowa, an owl-like monster that, according to legend, will carry its victim off when an owl calls the person's name. Not only that, but some more owl creatures are on the loose. So I will be watching Season 3, Episode 1 on the Scooby Doo Wario, the complete series box set. This box set has, of course, the first 2 seasons of Scooby Doo Wario, but it also has the 3rd season of the Scooby Doo Show. If you're wondering why the 3rd season of the Scooby Doo Show is on a completely different series' box set, well, that's because the 3rd season of the Scooby Doo Show was falsely advertised as a fake 3rd season of the Scooby Doo Wario television series. But as I established in my Scooby Doo Wario reviews, there's no 3rd season of Scooby Doo Wario. It's just the 3rd season of the Scooby Doo Show. There was never a 3rd season of Scooby Doo Wario. It was just those 2 seasons. It ended with episode 8 of season 2. That was the end. There was never a 3rd season. But Warner Brothers and Hanna-Barbera like to convince you otherwise by falsely advertising it as the 3rd season when it never existed. It's the 3rd season of the Scooby Doo Show. So while I'm happy that it's on DVD, I really wish they would have put it on a completely different box set with the Scooby Doo Show complete series box set, or its own separate DVD. Because putting it on the same DVD as Scooby Doo Wario is only going to confuse fans further, because now a lot of people are going to think there's a 3rd season of Scooby Doo Wario. So I will be clarifying that in all these Season 3 episode reviews. There is no 3rd season of Scooby Doo Wario, as I stated in my Scooby Doo Wario reviews. It is the 3rd season of the Scooby Doo Show. They just like to market it as the 3rd season of Scooby Doo Wario. But thankfully, I'm still happy it's on DVD. I just wish it wasn't on that box set. I wish it had its own separate DVD. Now, as far as this episode's reception is concerned, I'm not really sure how fans feel about this particular episode. I haven't heard much discussion about it, though the Scooby Doo Show tends to not be discussed much, except for diehard fans, mainly because, like, a lot of the seasons are, put under different banters, and, people get confused by it when so, like, you have to, like, continuously clarify to newcomers that the Scooby Doo Show was its own, entity and was its own show. But yeah, I haven't heard much discussion about this particular episode, so I really had no idea what to expect going into it. But what's my opinion on this episode? Do I think this is a good episode? Do I think it's a bad episode? Or do I think it's an average episode to start the 3rd season of the Scooby Doo Show? Well, let's find out, shall we? So let's take a look at the episode to see whether I think it is a good or bad episode of the Scooby Doo Show. The episode begins with the gang heading to a Native American reservation to find Velma's Uncle Dave, who works as a Border Patrol officer at the USA-Canadian border. They arrive by boat, during which they spot a huge owl making a horrible screeching sound and flying through the air. The gang arrive to Uncle Dave's lodge and find it deserted and ransacked. Sound familiar? It's literally the same setup as Season 2, Episode 1, Curse of the Viking Lake. Literally the exact same setup. And coincidentally, they're both the first episodes of their respective seasons. So I don't know what this obsession was with making Velma's uncle the central focus of the first episode of 2 seasons in a row. but they literally repeated the same setup as Season 2, Episode 1, which was odd to me. While they are there, Scooby claims to see 2 huge owls outside the window. After going outside, some people from the local Chippewa tribe come by, one of them being the tribe's chief, a man named Red Heron. Velma explains to Red Heron and the others with him about her uncle, Dave Walton, and Red Heron, who claims to be friends with Velma's uncle, explains that Velma's uncle was taken away by the Willowa, a legendary creature. By the way, the name Red Heron is such an on-the-nose name. It's quite similar to Red Herring. So, nice little touch there by Hanna-Barbera. He didn't act like a red herring in this episode, but it was definitely a nice on-the-nose reference to that kind of name. The Willowa is said to be a fiery beast that swoops down to take away those whose names have been called by an owl. Red Heron warns the gang to leave, but they stay to solve the mystery and find Velma's uncle. Scooby and Shaggy spend the night on the boat, while Fred and the girls stay at Dave's cabin. While the cowardly duo is out on the boat, they hear an owl saying Scooby's name, so the Willowa appears and begins chasing them. Scooby accidentally starts the boat, and they end up in a nearby sea cave. Meanwhile, Fred and the girls walk to the cave to find Shaggy and Scooby. Velma finds a Native American pictograph in the dirt, a sign for danger, which she believes was made by her uncle. Fred and the girls are then chased by 2 life-size owl men. They end up hiding in a room stocked full of kerosene and sandbags. Shaggy and Scooby are searching the same cave, where they discover a room full of fur coats, TVs, and other artifacts. They also discover some suits that look like the owl men from earlier, which they decide to put on. I do like this sequence where Shaggy and Scooby find the treasure cave. Not only is it the most vital clue of the episode, but Shaggy and Scooby get to have a little bit of humor in it, and I have a fun time with it. Scooby's being quite goofy, so is Shaggy, and they show their cowardice a little bit, and they find the most vital clue of the episode.
Like the tracks lead right to this door, Scoob. But it's locked. Do something, Scooby. Okay. Way to go, Scoob! After you. After you? No. I insist. After you. After you? I know. Like we'll go in together. What's wrong, Scoob? It's a bear. That's no bear, Scoob. It's a lady's fur coat. Huh? Oh. Scooby, where are you? Right here. That's what he said. And look at all this other neat stuff. Paintings, hi-fis, silver, statues. Yeah. Hey, I'll bet this stuff's worth a fortune. Shaggy, look. Zoinks! Giant owls, like we're goners!
Fred and the girls decide to capture the Owlmen, only to accidentally capture Shaggy and Scooby. They tell Fred and the girls about the treasures they found in the cave, giving them the final clue to solve the mystery. The gang decide to trap the Willowa and the Owlmen. After they successfully do so, the culprits are revealed as Gray Fox, one of the Native Americans from the local reservation, and 2 of his unnamed henchmen. The Willowa was a jet-powered helium balloon controlled by Gray Fox, and the jet engine was what made those horrible screeching sounds. As it turns out, all the loot that was found in the caves were stolen items that were being sold through a smuggling ring run by Gray Fox, and that the ring went all the way up to Canada. Velma's uncle eventually shows up with Chief Red Heron. Velma's happy to see that her uncle is safe, and Dave explains to his niece and her friends that Red Heron rescued him and that he had been kidnapped and locked up by Gray Fox and his men after discovering what they were doing and was hot on their trail. Chief Red Heron explains that he'll take Gray Fox and his cohorts to their tribe council elders and have them decide on a proper punishment for the culprits. As they walk home, Dave tells the gang they're going to celebrate when they arrive at the cabin. While walking, an owl says Scooby's name once again, and I have to question why, how is the owl saying Scooby's name? This actually is never explained at the end of the episode, so we don't know how the owl, said Scooby's name, both in the earlier portions of the episode and in this portion. Owls are not known for mimicking, so it's a little bit questionable how these two owls would know Scooby's name. But regardless, the episode ends with Scooby attempting to scare it, but the owl scares him with a loud howl, which causes Scooby to run up a tree, and everyone laughs. I'm going to give Season 3, Episode 1 of the Scooby Doo Show 1 star out of 5. Yeah, this wasn't a good episode. It was a very bad start to Season 3, not a good first impression for the third season of the Scooby Doo Show. It's a shame because Season 2 ended on such a high note that to go from that to a really bad episode to start the next season really is quite a shame. And a lot of it has to do with some of the repetitive elements of it and the dull nature of the episode, which I'll obviously get into. But before I get into my negatives of the episode and what makes this episode bad for me, I'll first go into my positives for the episode and the stuff that I did like in the episode. So starting with the positives, my first one is I think Fred was a good leader in this episode. He fulfilled his basic role of being a leader. And he created some cool traps in this episode. He created one in the caves, which accidentally captured Shaggy and Scooby. And he created one at the end of the episode to help capture the Willowa. So that was cool. I did like that he had multiple traps in the episode. Both were pretty cool. And he did show, he did fulfill his basic role of being a leader and showed good leadership in this episode. So overall, Fred did a nice job in this episode. He fulfilled his basic role in this episode. Then we have Velma. Velma was good in this episode, mainly due to the fact that this was a personal episode for Velma. She had personal stakes and personal ties to the mystery because her Uncle Dave was in danger. It is a bit repetitive in the design of, mainly like how I pointed out in the review, it is a bit repetitive of having not only another uncle who's in a cabin and the gang go to investigate and they realize that, they're gone and they're kidnapped. Bit of repetitive elements with, both of Velma's uncles from The Curse of Viking Lake and the Willowa episode. So that definitely did hinder the episode a little bit, but still, I do think it was good that Velma had personal stakes in the mystery. I always like when a relative of the gang is in an episode. It gives the gang one of the gang members more personal ties to the mystery and personal stakes. It is a shame that Velma doesn't really play much of a leadership role in this episode. She has her moments, but overall I feel Fred was much more of a leader. You think with Velma's uncle being the one in danger, this would be an episode where maybe she would be the leader, but not really. She had her moments here and there, but for the most part, she did still fulfill her role of helping to piece together the clues to help solve the mystery, so she did that. She did well on that front. And while her relationship with her Uncle Dave was not too established, or we didn't get too much with them, it still was good enough where you could tell that they had at least a close enough relationship, and you could clearly tell that she definitely admired her uncle, and her uncle taught her a lot. So yeah, I mean, it was cool seeing Velma in a different position. Again, the episode is definitely hindered by the fact that this feels like a repeat of Season 2, Episode 1, where we have an uncle, another uncle of Velma's that's in a similar situation to Uncle John in Season 2, Episode 1, and the fact that they're both the first episodes of their respective seasons is a bit weird. But yeah, it definitely did hinder that aspect, but it doesn't take away from the fact that getting to see Velma in a more personal light was definitely cool, and I will never not love seeing the gang interact with their relatives and have personal stakes and ties to the mystery. I still love that, and that's what Velma got, and it puts her in a unique position because instead of being just a good Samaritan, she has personal reasons for being there and wanting to solve the mystery. So yeah, good episode for Velma. Love seeing her relationship with her uncle Dave. Love the personal stakes for her in the mystery, and she did fulfill her basic role of helping to piece together the clues to help solve the mystery. And last, but certainly not least, we have Shaggy and Scooby. Shaggy and Scooby were their usual funny, cowardly selves. They were really entertaining in this episode. They had a lot of good, funny moments in this episode. They fulfilled their basic roles of being cowardly. And they found the most vital clue of the episode, which was the treasure room. I also did like that Scooby helped find one of the other clues, which was the feathers outside of Uncle John's cabin, which explained, who carried him away. Not that that wasn't really much of a mystery. And Scooby helped capture the Willowa at the end. He inadvertently, on the fly, was the bait. It wasn't really a ahead of time trap. Scooby didn't know that he was going to be the bait, but it just ended up being that way. And it was more on the fly. But still, Scooby helped capture the villain at the end, so that was good. So yeah, overall, Shaggy and Scooby, they did a lot in this episode. They fulfilled their basic roles of being their funny, cowardly selves. They both found clues in the episode, and Scooby helped capture the villain at the end of the episode. And my final positive is that I found the clues of the episode to be good. So the clues in the episode were, of course, the feathers that Scooby found, the Native American pictographs that Velma found, the cave that Fred, Daphne, Velma found with the kerosene and the sandbags, and of course the treasure room that Shaggy and Scooby found. All these were vital to what happened to Uncle John, how the Willowa, as a villain how Gray Fox was able to achieve the Willowa costume and effect, and what their motive was. So they all pointed towards key aspects. They pointed towards what happened to Uncle John, how one of the villains was able to be achieved, and also pointed towards the motive of the episode. So the clues fulfilled their basic roles and were overall good, and we got a good abundance of them. That's all I got for positives for the episode, so let's get on to my negatives of the episode and what makes this episode bad, in my opinion. So starting with the negatives, my first one is, no surprise, Daphne was weak in this episode. Yeah, once again, Daphne had nothing really to do in this episode. She wasn't really much of a leader in this episode. She didn't really help piece together the clues to help solve the mystery. She wasn't funny or cowardly. She didn't really find any of the clues, at least not individually. And overall, I just felt like Daphne did not play any sort of role in this episode and really didn't have anything to do. So yeah, once again, no surprise, Daphne was weak in this episode. Then we have the villains of the episode, who I thought were pretty weak and not that great in all honesty. So the main villains of the episode were the Willowa and the Owlmen. Now, not the Willowa as the main villain of the episode. The Willowa was not scary in the slightest. Nothing about the Willowa was particularly scary. In fact, he was pretty bright and vibrant for a villain, so I didn't find anything about him scary, but he also wasn't entertaining either. I found nothing about the Willowa to be fun or entertaining. When it comes to the Owlmen, they definitely had a better chance of being good. I did like that the scene where they were looking through the windows and Scooby was seeing them with the yellow blank eyes was kind of cool. It definitely reminiscent, once again, of the Curse of the Viking Lake, and I feel like the Vikings were definitely more intimidating when it came to that aspect. The Owlmen overall were just very goofy and lighthearted. They did not have any sort of scare factor. The closest they got to scary was maybe that one scene where they were looking in the window and they had those blank yellow eyes, but it wasn't as effective as the Viking Lake episode. So yeah, while it was kind of cool for like a minute, overall the Owlmen did not have anything particularly scary about them, and they weren't fun or entertaining either. So the villains just ended up being very weak, in all honesty, because they weren't scary in the slightest because they were too bright and colorful. They had no sort of scare factor whatsoever. And they weren't entertaining in the slightest because they did nothing that was fun or entertaining or had no sort of personality to make them stand out. They were very goofy and too bright and vibrant to be Scooby villains, especially with the Willowa. The trail the Willowa would leave was very rainbowish and kind of like very colorful, and it just is not what I'm looking for in a Scooby villain. And if the Scooby villain is not fun or entertaining or scary or creepy, then you've pretty much screwed up the villains of the episode. And neither the villains were neither scary or creepy or fun or entertaining. So to me, overall, the villains, they dropped the ball on it. I mean, it's a nice idea, I guess, to have owls as the villain for the episode. I mean, they were kind of creative, but they didn't really execute it as well as they could have. These owl men, and the Willowas, this giant flying owl, just none of them were particularly scary or threatening or creepy, and none of them were fun or entertaining to watch. So yeah, weak villains in my mind. Then we have the villains outside of costume, who I found to be uninteresting, and all of them very weak and dull. So you have Gray Fox and his 2 unnamed henchmen. I don't have to explain why the 2 unnamed henchmen are terrible. We don't know who the hell these guys are. We never seen them before. So yeah, don't know who the heck these guys are. Not explain who they are. They're just random Native American henchmen that I guess are part of their tribe. I don't know. Don't know who they are. No personality. They don't stand out in any way. So yeah, nothing interesting about them in the slightest. Gray Fox only was in one scene beforehand, and he really didn't make much of an impression from his counterparts. He was a very boring character outside of costume. You could argue that he kind of set up the Willowa a little bit, but I would argue that Red Heron, set up the villain way more than he did. In fact, Red Heron, explained the backstory of the Willowa and, explained the Willowa legend a lot more than Gray Fox did. The only thing I think Gray Fox contributed was saying that if an owl calls your name, that you're essentially the Willowa's next target. But that was it. It wasn't anything spectacular, and he wasn't particularly interesting outside of costume. So yeah, all these men were uninteresting. We either didn't see them before, or they just made no sort of impression in their one and only scene. I found the motive of the episode to be very weak, in all honesty. So the motive for Gray Fox and his 2 unnamed henchmen was that essentially they wanted to scare everyone away so that they could cover up their smuggling operation. Now, this motive is nothing new. We've seen smuggling operations before. It's not specified what kind of smuggling operation it is. We don't know if it's a money one or if it's some type of other smuggling operation. I don't know. They don't really specify it. I'm assuming it's a money one, but even so, there's no flavor or, layers to it. It's just a very boring and basic and bare bones motive that we've seen before, and there's no flavor to it or layers to it to add any sort of uniqueness to it or make it fresh in any way. So it ends up just being a basic, boring, dull smuggling operation motive that we've seen before in Scooby Doo, and they don't do anything to add anything fresh to that dynamic of a motive. So yeah, the motive was just weak, dull. We've seen this before. Nothing new. They needed to add more flavor and expand upon it more to make it at least somewhat interesting, but they didn't, and it ended up just being a bare bones, basic smuggling operation motive. There was a lack of suspects in the episode, so you only had 3 suspects in the episode. You had Chief Red Heron, you had the unnamed Native American with Chief Red Heron and Gray Fox in the beginning, as well as at the end with Chief Red Heron when they went to go investigate the cave, and you have Gray Fox. Now, if it was one villain, I would give it a pass, but because it's 3 suspects and there's 3 villains, I can't give it a pass because it was either going to be all 3 of them, or it was going to be 1 or 2 of them, and it ended up being 1 of them, with the other 2 being guys we had never seen before. So yeah, they definitely needed, at the bare minimum, 4 suspects, but at least 5 or 6 to round out the suspect pool for the episode. I found the mystery of the episode to be very poorly executed. So the mystery of the episode was you wanted to know what happened to Uncle Dave. Now, this could have been an interesting mystery, and in fact, I've praised the previous episode, Season 2, Episode 1, The Curse of the Viking Lake, the previous time where Velma's uncle was in danger, and said how I liked that because of the way it was executed. However, here, I didn't really like it because the answers we got were unsatisfying, and it wasn't as engaging as it could have been. Some of that has to do with the villains, and some of that has to do with the repetitive nature of the episode. The fact that we've seen this kind of thing before, but they added nothing new to make it interesting. It feels too repetitive of the first uncle that the first time Velma's uncle was in danger with Uncle John, that I feel it wasn't unique enough to where it made it a compelling mystery. And I just overall felt that the answers we got were unsatisfying. I wasn't happy with the motive. I wasn't happy with the way Uncle Dave was found. It was very rushed. It wasn't satisfying to me. And while it was an interesting idea, and I do like the idea of the gang wanting to know what happened to their relative, and I do like the idea of wanting to know, hey, what happened to Velma's Uncle Dave? They did not execute it in a way where I found it satisfying or fun to watch, and that a lot of that had to do with the villains, as well as the rushed nature at the end, but also the repetitive of the fact that we kind of saw this before in Season 2, Episode 1, and it was done better in that aspect, and I just feel that they didn't do enough here to make it, to basically distinguish that, distinguish this uncle's, capture from the previous uncle's capture. They didn't do enough to, make their predicaments different, and it overall felt like a repetitive nature to the mystery. So yeah, while the idea is interesting and good, I think the execution was lacking, and they definitely needed to spice things up to make it more different and interesting compared to Uncle John's, capture, because it just feels too familiar to that, and the villains aren't as engaging as the Vikings either, and the answers we got were just unsatisfying, and it just wasn't a satisfying conclusion to the episode. So yeah, while the mystery was interesting idea, it was very poorly executed. The atmosphere was completely non-existent in this episode. I felt no tension or suspense or creepiness or eeriness. I wasn't fearing for the gang's safety. I wasn't on the edge of my seat wondering what was going to happen next. And I found nothing about the villains or the setting to be creepy or eerie. So yeah, there was no sort of atmosphere in this episode for me. It was overall a very tensionless, suspenseful non-creepy, scary atmosphere. Just the atmosphere was not there. And I just felt no tension or suspense or creepiness or eeriness from either the villains or the setting. It was just completely non-existent. And my final negative is I found the setting of the episode to be really dull, in all honesty. So the main setting of the episode was the American Reserve or Indian Reserve, whatever you want to call it. It was completely dull. I mean, it was just a bunch of caves, once again, another cabin. A bunch of woods. It's on some type of island or near some type of ocean because the gang have to go on boat to even get out there. So it's just like a lot of boring landmass, and there's not really anything cool or unique about it. It's just a very dull, boring setting. Nothing new or fresh. It feels very, repetitive of previous settings. Nothing about it feels Scooby-esque. And it's just overall a dull setting for a Scooby-Doo episode. It is not an interesting setting. Nothing about the setting is interesting. It is one of the more boring settings of, the Scooby-Doo franchise. Not interesting in the slightest. Overall, guys, I would personally not recommend this episode to fans and newcomers of the show. It's a very poor and bad start and dull start to this third season of the Scooby-Doo show. It's just not a great episode. While it is interesting to see the personal aspect for Velma with her Uncle Dave, I feel it's just too repetitive of the Curse of the Viking Lake, and it's too dull for me to give it anything higher than a 1. It's just a very bad episode, and I can see why I don't go back to it. There's just nothing really interesting about it. It just fails across the board because it's either a lot of the aspects are either dull and boring, or they're repetitive of Curse of the Viking Lake, and it just is not a great episode, and it's not one I recommend you go back to. It's just a very bad start to the third season of the Scooby Doo show. Not a great way to start season 3. Just, yeah, very disappointing, but really one of my least favorite episodes of the Scooby Doo Show so far. I don't know if it's the worst episode, but it's certainly one of the worst episodes of the Scooby Doo Show. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the review. Please give a like if you did. Comment down below your thoughts on the episode. Do you like this episode? Do you think I'm being too harsh on it? Are there things that you see that I don't see? Do you love this episode? Do you think it's, a really good episode? Do you hate this episode? I'd be interested in that as well. Are you like me? Do you consider it a terrible episode to start the 3rd season of the Scooby Doo Show and, and agree with all the flaws and problems I brought up? Or are you somewhere in the middle where you just think it's okay, it's average and decent, but it's not good or bad? I'm curious for your thoughts, so let me know. And subscribe for more Scooby Doo content like this, or if you're just interested in any of my other content, obviously I'll have more Scooby Doo reviews on the way. We got Scooby Doo TV show episode reviews, Scooby Doo movie reviews, book reviews, video game reviews, and Let's Plays. You name it, we're doing all things Scooby Doo on this channel. So if you're a diehard Scooby Doo fan like me, or a newcomer who, needs help navigating this big franchise and wants to get into it, come join the channel, experience some amazing Scooby Doo content. Let's talk about our favorite mystery-solving gang, and have some fun discussions about them and their individual episodes and movies and video games and books. In my next video, I'll continue my 2025 summer special with the review of Season 3, Episode 2 of the Scooby Doo Show, titled A Creepy Tangle in the Bermuda Triangle. I'm very interested to see how this episode will hold up. It's been a little while since I've seen this episode, but this is an episode with the Skeleton Men, and the Skeleton Men are quite fondly remembered villains of the Scooby-Doo franchise, and the Scooby-Doo community holds them up pretty well. So I'm interested to see if this episode holds up well. I think I have good memories of it being, at least decent or at least somewhat good. So I think it can't be any worse than this episode. Hopefully it'll be a step up, but I am quite curious and interested to see how the Skeleton Men episode holds up. So if you want to know my thoughts on Season 3, Episode 2, A Creepy Tangle in the Bermuda Triangle, then come join me next time. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and as always, peace out.
We got it all together for a brand new show. Scooby Doo is here again away.